sound like you? Every time you pick up a book, you focus, you get ready, and then you just don't put the read into ready. You read one page, and then you're done, and the prospect of reading 500 more just exhausts you. And then you feel bad about yourself. You think, what happened to me? I used to read so much, and now I go to the bookshop, I look at the pretty covers, I spend money, and then I fill my shelf and pretend I read it all to my guests. I never have the time now, you think. Who does? I get back from school or from work, and then I either cook or clean or I study, and then I eat, and then I spend time with my family, and then it's suddenly 10 p.m. and I have to go to bed in 15 minutes, so what's the point of starting a new book? So you just go on your phone and then you end up on YouTube Shorts for like an hour straight, and then an hour more, and then it's 1 p.m. because the clock kept ticking. I know you know all the benefits of reading. I mean, school practically shoves it down your throat. Of course you want to be more empathetic. Of course you want to see a whole different world. Of course you want to be more intelligent. You do try, but the dust still gathers and the books keep piling on, and you wait for college burnout to end, but it never does, and every time you want to do it, just life gets in the way. So you probably hit the internet after that, and there's billions of search results, and everybody seems to have the same problems, and people claim to have fixes, but when you click on videos of people who read a lot, the tips are kind of like really toxic. Like the tips are like, oh, just spend less time eating, or oh, just spend less time sleeping, or oh, surround yourself with only the people who care about reading, only those people. And you're like, well, so do you want me to just not be friends with all of my friends anymore? In this video, I want to give you tips that actually help you to read more, that motivate you to read more, without killing that desire in you for the rest of your life. First, let's talk about fanfiction. It's a weird place perhaps to start because there's so much to say about attention and scheduling and what to do when you don't like scheduling and how to read more, and this entire video is going to be long, but please stick around. So why are we starting with fanfiction? Well, because there's so many people who read fanfiction on a day-to-day basis, and they read literally 900-page fanfictions in 2 days, they read whole series, they read literally thousands of fanfictions, they read, but it's just not books, and no matter how much they try, they just can't seem to read actual books. Or there are people who are in a reading slump, and they really want to read, and it's not for a shortage of books, there's plenty of books around them, but they just can't seem to read. So this bit is all about that. The reasons people read fanfictions vary, but just some of them, and I would appreciate more in the comments of course, are that people want that low investment energy. They just don't want to invest that energy into getting familiar with new characters and like having to memorize all of their names. I mean, who needs that when you know all of the Harry Potter fanfictions and you can get all of the pairings that you never would get in the original book? Sometimes people read fanfiction for the huge book selection. It's free and you scroll and there's literally thousands, no, millions, no, I mean billions of books that you can pick from that people write, and they update on a daily basis. And it's almost like watching a TV show because you get notified every time somebody posts a new update. Whereas when you read a book, they take years to write, so you might have to wait literal years. And how can you wait when you know that that particular character died at the end of that particular book? It's too much to endure. And another reason, of course, is for the social side. When people read fanfictions, they comment on them. So when you read along, you don't feel like you're alone. So let's talk about some of the tips that I have for making books feel more exciting and to really get used to them and to read more and to get out of that reading slump. So tip number 1 in this section is that people feel a lot less pressure to read fanfiction, so they just don't pick up books because who needs that extra pressure, right? And to this I just have one tip, and it's if you don't like a book, please stop reading it. Absolutely pro DNF team, did not finish a book, because if you don't like it, why are you reading it? Just to tick some goal, just to have a stranger appreciate you more. It's your reading habits, it's your enjoyment. And another reason that people prefer fanfictions, I guess, is because, I mean, if you're doing it, people already sort of kind of judge you, so it's not that same sort of judgment that you get when you say that you like Twilight or Harry Potter, and then people act all snobby and say that this isn't reading, that you should be reading deep stuff. And obviously you should stop caring what people think, and that's a tip that everybody gives in almost every single video, but nobody talks about what it's like when you haven't quite stopped caring what people think. And I think for the majority of people that's the issue. I read so much, and I read a lot of deep stuff or classics or whatever people say is like good literature, but I still want to read like books that I read just for fun sometimes, you know? And so having people judge is hard. And so while you're on that road, I think that there is a very easy fix that you can do, and you can read several books at the same time. And this is sort of counterintuitive because usually people say, oh, just read the one book, like struggle and get through it. But I think that's kind of pointless because sometimes you want to give it more of a chance, but you don't want to be spending all of your time with the one book. So if you read 3 very different books, I think it helps. For example, I'm reading nonfiction, I'm reading classic, and I'm reading fiction right now. And all of these books are wildly different, so it's very easy for me to not get confused at all. And if you do get confused, then take notes on the books that you're reading, and then you can just, oh, read the little notes, oh, remember what's happening, oh, get back into that book. And then if you still feel uncomfortable with yourself and you're not quite willing to share what you're reading, but you also don't want to say nothing, then when somebody asks you what are you reading, you can just say the book that you think they would like. Reading several books at once is not only more entertaining, and it trains your brain so that you can get more flexible and be like, okay, I'm into this book, no, now I'm into this book, and be more focused so that you remember what you're reading. But it's also a way to be more confident. And as you build that confidence, I think that you should slowly practice, and just remember that you're reading for yourself. So who cares what a random stranger thinks? Another reason that people are reading less in today's world is that it just feels like you can browse really easily through fanfiction and other online websites, and you just can't do the same with books. And in reply to that, bookshops, but I do appreciate those people who are more introverted, who are like, okay, I'd rather just buy the book and don't have anybody see me buy the book. Like I don't want to have an interaction with anyone about that book, because you know those days when you just want to be within yourself. And I also feel like people don't really talk about the fact that books are really expensive, especially hardbacks. Every time I buy a hardback, I cry, and then I feel happy because it's a hardback and I like hardbacks, but they are really expensive. So I feel like fan fiction is also good for people who don't really want to be spending money on books and then not read them. It just feels a lot easier because you can switch between books just like that, and nobody's going to judge you if you drop it. You could always try a sample in Amazon or Google Books, and then if you don't like the book, you can just drop it after that. Same as with fan fiction. You give it a chance, you don't like it, you drop it. Electronic books can also help. If you've been following this channel for a while, you know that as much as I love physical books, I love electronic books. I consume them on a day-to-day basis because they are, first of all, more convenient for me, but they are also less expensive. So if you struggle with finding books and then you feel bad about not actually reading them, so then you don't want to read other books, and then you get into a whole cycle of not reading anything, I think electronic books are a good fix because you can just think about the money that you're saving rather than spending it on a physical copy, so that can also be very helpful. So you might not like books because it doesn't feel like a social activity like I mentioned before. On the Kindle, when you read, there are certain lines in a book, quotes I guess, that are underlined because other people have underlined them a lot. So you can see what other people are underlining, why they think that's important. That can feel very social. You can also listen to the audiobook narrator as you read along. So it's not like you're reading in silence or even with music. Somebody is reading right there with you. And of course, the easiest tip is to find book friends or people who are willing to read that book with you, or people who have already read that book, and to just know that there's somebody out there who's reading the same book as you. Buddy reads are one of my favorite things to do because even if you don't read at the same pace, you know that there is one more person who's reading that exact same book as you, and that you have somebody there. And finally, the bit about emotional investment. So I've been getting really into short story collections lately. Short stories can be really helpful because often they follow the same set of characters, but like with different stories, so you don't have to get reinvested over and over again, and the stories are shorter, and it's easier for you to ease off that one character that you just keep thinking about. And another way to do this, it doesn't work for everyone, but you could also try and just reread that book that you're still thinking about and kind of have a chance to say goodbye. The key thing about reading slumps is that the best way to beat them is to try something that you don't usually try, because odds are you're in a slump because everything is a monotony and you just repeat the same things over and over again. So trying new things, reading a book that's filled with fast-paced action, for example, something really quick and really light, is a great way to feel that you're over and you're ready to be emotionally invested all over again. So now you're ready to divert that attention from reading fanfiction to reading actual physical books or electronic books or whatever books you want to read, and you're emotionally ready and you're here opening the book. But now you need the right environment, right? To do this, I urge you right now to set up a Goodreads and a Storygraph account. These two apps, I kid you not, I use them almost every day to see what people are reading, to get new book recommendations, to update myself on my own reading progress. These apps are so good for recommendations, for seeing what people are up to, and they're just really great for staying motivated. If you're even more motivated, you could start a Bookstagram account or a Booktube account. I mean, there's whole niches on almost every social media devoted to reading, so you can find reading partners. And this next bit is important. You should try and find people who read a little bit more than you and people who read like you. And the thing is about people who read more than you, there are a lot of people who read 100 plus books a year. There are people who read 200 plus books a year. I remember last year I was really proud of myself because I read almost every day and I was feeling super motivated, and I read almost 200 books. And then I had somebody read like 500 books and they were like, oh, this year was bad for me. And I was like, if this year is bad for you, what is my year? So there is that sense of insecurity even when you don't treat reading as a competition. So for that reason, I think that you should find people who are motivation, like that one person was for me, but also people who are like you, so that you can feel that you're not like behind everybody else and that you have people there to support you. Healthy competition is good, but that's the thing about healthy competition. So I am somebody who really likes setting goals. Like, I set my goal on Goodreads yearly, religiously. On the 1st of January, I say, this year I'm going to read 100 books, and then I update it as I go along. So for example, if I'm really behind and I know I'm not going to read 100 books, then I make it a little bit less, but still enough to challenge me. Because what I don't like about these videos, what I call really toxic, is this promoting the behavior that if you set a goal, you have to accomplish it, so you have to do everything that you can do to accomplish it. And I feel like it makes reading just a sort of like number-based competition, or studying, or like advancing professionally. It stops being something that you can do for enjoyment and for pleasure. And so when you set goals for yourself. Don't be stuck on those extremely toxic challenges. Like, you can do a challenge like 5 books in 5 days, but if you're missing out on sleep, if you're letting everything be dragged down by the challenge, I just think it's not good for you. People say that you should surround yourself with people who read, and that's true, but that doesn't mean that you should only be spending time with people who read because you want to read more. I mean, Sarah and reading on Saturdays and hiking with Henry on Fridays, right? Combine your interests. And speaking of combining your interests can work really very, very well, especially when you're just starting out to read, because you want to read, but you also don't want to take time away from your other hobbies, so you can gradually build up to it and you can combine it, and it's very time efficient, and it also saves energy. And something else that I've been meaning to say, this doesn't really work for me, but if you're somebody who likes to have clear zones in every house, like on the bed you only sleep, on the table you only work, make sure that you set up a space that you can calmly read in. So not in front of the TV, even though, you know, sometimes I can read in front of the TV, it depends on the book, but set up a space that works for every book. So if it's a book that requires a lot of concentration, you know that in that space there will be no one who disturbs you. Now, getting back to the time and energy. Before you do anything, you can do this right now while I talk and just listen in the background. Sit down and look at your schedule. Or if you don't have a schedule, because I know that there are a lot of people, especially people with ADHD, who hate schedules, who just can't have anything to do with schedules, just think about what your day is usually like. So you leave for work or for school on that day at that time, and then you come back at that particular time, and then you eat or you study, and then you go on social media. So just figure out what you do. And then redivert certain attention from bad habits into more positive directions. So for example, I know that when I come home in the evening when I'm tired, I have a habit of scrolling through Instagram. And that's the thing. That's not a bad habit because I use that to recharge myself a little bit, to feel like, okay, I'm catching up with old friends, I'm staying connected. The problem is not when you spend 1 hour on Instagram a day. The problem is when you spend 5 and you put away important responsibilities. So just recognize that and divert that attention. Something that really helps for me is setting physical timers. So what do I mean by physical timers? I don't mean this. This is a physical timer, but this is not the physical timer. What I mean is, for example, I have a young brother and he sleeps during the day and he wakes up like afternoon, like in the afternoon. So what I like to do is I like to say, okay, I mean Instagram is important because I use it to stay on top of my social media, just in general managing it and reading more and managing my accounts and making friends. So I will spend time on it even though I know that I have work to do, but it's okay, I won't judge myself for it. I will spend time on it, but only until my brother wakes up. Because I know that I'm doing useful things, I just could be doing more useful things. And I've talked here about how important it is to find a format that works for you. But audiobooks are so helpful, and I won't tolerate anyone saying that audiobooks are not reading. Personally, I don't use audiobooks that much actually. I prefer to just physically read, even if it's only for 5 minutes. But so many people prefer to do that while they're doing things, and that's also completely valid. And if it helps, I urge you to do that. But the important thing here is that, have you noticed that we actually spend so much time during the day just waiting? We wait for the water to boil, or we wait for the bus, train, car to arrive so that we can go somewhere, or we wait for our face mask to finish. I don't know, we just wait for a lot of things. And that seems like nothing, but actually if you add it up, it comes to a lot. So even if you don't see the point of starting a new book on reading for 5 minutes, just read a few pages, read to a point where there's like a full stop. And those 5 minutes really add up. So if you read 5 minutes while you wait for the bus to arrive, and then you wait for the bus to arrive 4 times because you go to work and then back and then to the supermarket and then back, I don't know, it adds up to 20 minutes. And that's a very manageable goal. So start small and build it up and use times even when you think you're wasting only a little bit of time. I said at the beginning of this video that these are tips that work both for people who like scheduling and for people who don't, and so I would also like to propose a new method of scheduling that you might like to do that's not oriented by time but instead by if it's heavy or light workflow. So personally, I feel really tired after doing exercise, and I just don't feel like fresh and invigorated like other people, so I would need time to sort of get back into normal. So for me, after sport, I just can't physically study. I would rather relax with a book, and then after studying, I can't read because it's too much eye strain, so I would stretch around a lot or do the exercise. So if you structure your day in a way that you're always doing something, so you're not just wasting your time, but it's also easy for you to switch because it doesn't feel like reading is adding too much extra pressure onto you. And another thing about scheduling, there are certain days where certain formats work better. So if I have a lot of things to carry, I do not want to take an extra book even though I'm constantly reading. So just take your phone and then you have the book with you. This next step is really simple, but perhaps it will help. It really helps when you have books that you want to read. And I don't mean just knowing what you want to read, but actually having the book. So book subscription boxes I know are very helpful for people because then you don't have to actually waste time and drive somewhere to get them. But I really like browsing, and if you like browsing, make sure that you set a time when you know that you're free and that it's not too much of an extra strain to go and get books in advance, so that next time when you want to read books, you actually have them. And having an ever-growing list of TBR, although sometimes it's scary because you realize that you'll never read all the books that you wanted to read during your lifetime, it also helps because then you always know that you have a list there, and just having a few sentences about what the subject topic is can be really helpful. And the best news is Storygraph, Goodreads, they all do that for you. There is something called clip thinking, and I fear that TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Reels and all of these 15-second formats they're really killing your attention spans. I mean, you can't focus on a video that's longer than 5 minutes anymore, so how are you going to focus on a 500-page book? And you just need to get that attention back. My first step for improving your attention is to actually do things slowly sometimes and to do them in a more mindful way. I am that one person who just has no chill, who has to be rushing, who cannot walk slowly. I have a location and I need to get there, and what I've been doing more is I've been really recognizing when I'm being super impatient and I just want to do things quickly and purposefully slowing down, because it really helps you to do that when you have a mind that has a lot of responsibilities and you're reading. Because instead of thinking, I'll read quickly, I'll get this done, I'll do the next job on my list, it's more calm and you can really engage with the book more. And another thing is pulling your mind back when it starts to wander. So for example, you're studying for math and then suddenly you realize you're not even thinking about math, you're thinking about what sort of cereal you want to eat in the morning. And when you pull your mind back to math, and when you start doing math again, when you recognize that yes, I've wandered off, that's really helpful, because you can also pull that attention back when you're reading, so it helps you to focus more on your book. Another thing that's been a game changer is Flora. Flora is like the cheap version of Plantly, and absolutely here for it. If an app is free, it's legal, so just get the app. It's the same thing as Plantly, you don't pay any money. You basically like put an hour of productivity or more, however much you need, and then you can't use your phone until that time runs out, and the tree grows. And if you use your phone, then the tree dies. And I've been so invested into making the perfect garden. And another thing is, of course, to have your work in manageable chunks. But if I know that, for example, this is stoner, right? And I say to myself, okay, I want to get to 50 pages, and I just randomly put a bookmark here. That's actually 100 pages. So you put a bookmark here, and you can just read. You get to the bookmark, you stop, you have your time to process, and then you do other work, and then you get back to it. And you finish more that way, because it doesn't feel like you have to concentrate to finish the entire book. You can finish just like a portion of it. Something else that will help you with reading more and feeling more energetic is actually reducing eye stress. That's a very big reason why people don't read more, because your eyes get so tired because you spend literally your entire day in front of a screen, and then it just hurts. Finally, let's talk about college burnout. School kills the desire to read, and if you want to get over that, I suggest doing it the exact opposite way of what school forces you to do. School forces you to completely annotate your book and then to write a whole 2,000-word essay about it and then to talk about it. If you don't want to, don't do any of it. If you feel like it, read a book and then forget about it, and just do that until you feel like you're reading for the pleasure and for the enjoyment again. Find a new comfort author. Reread a book that you've read thousands of times. Talk to your parents about it, even when they don't want to listen. Just practice reading if you really want to read. Don't force yourself to read. If you skip a day, it's fine. You're reading for yourself, you're reading for your pleasure. Just keep reading until it becomes as natural as picking up the TV remote. Don't yell at yourself, just motivate yourself and encourage yourself, and read more and enjoy the books you read.